This is the February 20th subcommittee meeting of the Revere City Council Zoning Subcommittee. I am the chairperson, Stephen Reardon. We have Councilor Ganasso, Councilor Novoselsky, and Councilor Patch. Subcommittee members here tonight. Councilor Penter is still out ill. We have three matters on the agenda this evening. I am going to take them out of the order in which they were posted on this evening's agenda because as I understand it, the first matter will likely take up a lot of time here if we are to give everybody the right to speak, and I intend to do that. That having been said, I would call the proponents of item C-14-01, which is a petition from Jack Darien and Harry Darien Bike Outfitters, 1039 Broadway, Revere, Massachusetts, requesting permission from the City Council to expand a pre-existing non-conforming use for the purpose of a Class II license for the sale of used motorcycles at the Bikers Outfitters within the GB district at 1039 Broadway, Revere, Mass. Please state your name and your address.
Good evening. James Cipolletta, 385. Okay. Well, I'm still James Cipolletta, 385 Broadway, Revere, on behalf of the petitioner. As we told the council in full a couple of weeks ago, this matter is before the council for purposes of cleaning up some of the zoning irregularities and confusion that reigns in the city records. Mr. Chairman, Councilor Guanasso drew upon his experience both as a councilor and a former license commissioner when we appeared before the council for the public hearing. And as a result of that knowledge that was imparted to me and to the client, we did some further investigating. We've been in touch, actually, with the License Commission. I think we'll be good to go for sale of one and two family homes. Used in new cars, if we get the zoning squared away. Apparently, there's still that sticky issue as to whether in the zoning code and the site plan review committee and them are requiring that we have a special permit to be able to expand the current non-conforming use of the property so as to, although the license does, as the councilor correctly stated, allow us to do one and two new and used motor vehicles, we're not in complete alignment with the zoning. So they are requiring us to have a special permit so that we would be in zoning compliance for the sale of new and used motor vehicles. And I think it's a very short step. I don't think it's a change from the status quo, and certainly not going to be even noticeable driving by or living in the neighborhood as to between the proposed and what's been going on for 30 years. So, Mr. Chairman, I'd like to thank Councilor Guanasso for pointing us in the right direction of my Lexus research and making this matter perhaps a little more streamlined an issue than it was when we first presented it. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Attorney Cipolletta. Are you aware of I'm sure you are aware, just for the public record, that Site Plan Review has made two recommendations, which, while they are only recommendations to the City Council and are not incumbent upon us, we generally give great deference to that committee. The first being 5 parking spaces shall be striped in front of the building, and the second being there shall be no outdoor storage of trailers or motorcycles in the front of the building.
Yes.
And is your client inclined to agree to that?
He did agree at the site plan.
At the site plan review,
yes.
Very well. Thank you, Mr. Cipolletta.
Thanks,
if anybody else wishes to speak on this, I would invite you to do so at this point, whether you're in favor of this or not. And since there's no one standing up or raising their hand, I will open it up first to the subcommittee and then to the other city councils who are here. And I should say we do have other councilors here. Councilor Giannino, Councilor Morabito, and Councilor Powers have also joined us this evening. Councilor Ganasso, you wish to speak, I understand.
Yes, Mr. Chairman, based on twofold. Number one, I'm a member of the zoning subcommittee, and number two, I'm a Ward 3 City Council, which this particular business is located in. As we stated previously at the public hearing, this will not alter the continuity of what's going on in that area. The people to their right sell used cars, people to their immediate right sell used cars, and they sell, this application is absolutely in no difference to anything else that's going on there. And the single most important thing is, Mr. Chairman, members of the subcommittee, is I have not received one call in opposition from any of the residential area people who reside at that location. And there are a few homes on that end of Broadway, which a lot of people don't realize that they are. And in none of them, and they share no shame in giving me a call at any tweaking time, they have not called in opposition to this particular proposal. So as I stated earlier, I would be in favor of this. The individuals who operate this business have been nothing but first class all the way. And so I would suggest to this zoning subcommittee to vote favorably for this evening, and hope that the committee of the whole feels the same. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Councilor Ganasso. Councilor Novoselsky.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Chairman, I don't have a problem with Bikers Outfitters. You know, they probably run a great operation, and it's not a big operation, but you know, I'm sure they do some decent work there. My basic problem is the Class 2 license. This council several years ago put a limit on the number of Class 2 licenses in this city. Right now, we have 42 Class 2 licenses in the city of Revere. You talk about calling us used car city, because that's what we are. There are too many Class 2 licenses in this city right now. And this only opens the door. I know they're saying it's only my motorcycles, but it's going to open the door for other Class 2s. And we set this reason. We went through the legislation to get it passed. They authorized it. We changed our ordinance, and that's where it is now. And this is just adding another Class 2 license to the list. And, you know, basically, you know, when it comes up, I will be voting against it. So, and that's my primary issue. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Novoselsky. Councilor Patch.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I support the Ward 3 councilor. I have got absolutely no negative phone calls on this issue. I know I actually had one for, and actually it was Dennis Michella, who I worked in the police department for many years, and I know he's a enthused motorcyclist, and I also, in my previous experience as a police officer, I know that they operated very well there, and they never had any problems except maybe an occasional break-in, but that we took care of. But and I think he's, as far as the license, I feel that he's more or less grandfathered in. I think basically they've been doing this practice in the past, and I don't think we necessarily have to put him in with automobiles. This is a motorcycle, and unfortunately he's going to have to compete with Harley Davidson. And also, if you look at where Watts was on Broadway, that's a motorcycle place right now, and he's going to have to work hard to keep his business going. So I'm going to vote in favor of it, Mr. Chairman. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Patch. Any other councilors? And by the way, I'd like to welcome Councilor Arrigo to the chambers. Any other councilors have any discussion on this matter? Attorney Cipolletta, if you could just answer a question for my edification. You did mention that you had done some research on this. And as I see this issue, it is a question of whether or not, I mean, we have a limit to our licenses. I would assume that this is a question of whether this license is in fact already in force or at least grandfathered in some way, as opposed to a new application for a license, which if it were, based on what Councilor Novoselsky has suggested, it would not be something that the License Commission could legally approve. We can hold it a minute. We have an expert technician here replacing the battery, I trust. We're going to have to vote for an increase in the in the budget line for batteries, I think, after. It's either that or inexpensive batteries. Perhaps the batteries are no good. What kind of batteries? Energizers? I have trouble with those too. Oh, those aren't the good ones, though, are they? Those are the cheap ones. The Duracells, yeah. I think we have corrected our technical issues.
Thanks, Joanne. Yes, Mr. Chairman, that is exactly the issue that the License Commission is going to have to resolve. And I actually had inquiry from the chairman of the License Commission, who had gone through the file, as did one of the other commissioners, because they had had a heads up that this was coming their way, either before the public hearing or as a result of the public hearing that happened here a couple of weeks ago. And they're comfortable with it, and they are also researching, as I did when Councilor Guanasso pointed us in that direction, that the Class 1 will allow you to sell both new and used bikes. However, the zoning district does not allow you to sell used bikes, and that's where the incongruity occurred. So I think the analysis at the License Commission is going to be two-leveled. One, are they grandfathered, and do they actually have a license, or has it lapsed for different reasons? And the other would be, does your Class 1 license allow you also to sell used bikes? So it seems that whichever way you come down on that question, it will likely be an affirmative. I'm just giving my opinion, not speaking for the License Commission, because they haven't told me how they were going to vote. But yes, the issues that you pointed up are exactly the issues that they need to resolve.
So essentially, the question is whether a Class 1, which they have an existing Class 1, subsumes the Class 2 license.
Yes.
It seems to me that this is a question for the License Commission. We're only being presented here with the change in the zoning, unless I'm missing something here. Given that, I don't know that we have the authority. We would expect the License Commission to act according to our ordinances, and they have not yet come down with an opinion, but we would expect them to do that. And I don't want to get in a clash with the License Commission. So from my perspective, and given the fact that the ward councilor is not against it, given the fact that it doesn't seem to be anybody here against it, I would, in knowing the area down there, I would suggest that I would probably be in favor of changing the zoning in any respect. As it stands right now, we have no further discussion on it. Apparently, I would solicit a motion from the...
Motion to approve.
We have a motion on the floor to report this out favorably to the full City Council for a vote on the next City Council meeting. I'll take a roll call on this. Councilor Patch?
Yes.
Councilor Novoselsky?
No.
Councilor Guanasso?
Yes.
And the chair votes yes. So this will be reported out favorably. This will be reported out favorably to the full city council for the next subcommittee, and Councilor Novoselsky may submit a minority report at that time if he likes. That concludes this, the subcommittee's entertainment of that particular item. We're going to move on to the third item on the list. And again, we'll be coming back to the first item after the third is heard, and that is item number C-14-02, a petition from Victoria Vanacore, Revere Adult Health Day Healthcare Center, 765 Revere Beach Parkway, Revere, seeking permission from the Revere City Council to modify a non-conforming structure for the purpose of expanding the operation of an existing adult daycare facility at 765 Revere Beach Parkway, Revere, Massachusetts. And once again, I would ask the petitioner or their representative to please approach the podium and offer us whatever they have in mind to offer us. And you better hold on one more second. It looks like the batteries are still an issue. Is it better? Okay. Names and addresses, please.
I'll make it short so I don't kill another microphone. James Cipolletta, 385 Broadway. It's me, unquestionably. 385 Broadway, Revere, on behalf of the petitioner. With me is the manager of the site, Claudia Escobar, and she's the person who's there when the site is open. I know that some of the councilors had questions and wanted a representative from the administration of the daycare center to be present to answer questions tonight. She's here. As I had stated at the public hearing, this is an ongoing business operating under the benefit of a special permit issued by the Revere City Council. It was either in 2010 or 2011. And the petitioner has come into the good fortune of having the opportunity of leasing the entire building, whereas now they have half the building. So with that other half of the building, they now pick up all of the parking. So as as a license that was granted under the special permit has been successfully, and although a couple of little bumps in the road at the beginning couple of months has now smoothed out, and they're operating under the auspices of the special permit in a very orderly manner. And I think I would say to the benefit of the community and to the residents of the surrounding communities also who need this type of care for individuals of advanced age, which now seems to be more and more of a commonplace occurrence. So rather than my fielding the questions, unless it is to do with the zoning, which I would be happy to offer without killing another microphone, I would request Claudia to answer questions with regard to the everyday operation of the center, what the activities are, and so on and so forth. So with that, I would just throw it back to the council.
Thank you, Attorney Cipolletta. I will, at this point, I think I'll just, there may be some questions here, and there may be some questions from the audience, but I think given the council has some certain amount of expertise and familiarity with this thing, we should probably turn it over to the subcommittee members at this point for any questions or comments. Councilor Granasso.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I certainly am well aware of the petitioner's application before us. I was aware of it when it initially came up, and I expressed very, very sincere concerns about the approach that had taken place, and I'm going to repeat myself again, whereas I had a gentleman who not only was a friend of mine, a friend of the city, he was also a member of the planning board of our community, and he was in need of help. He was at the stage of his life where he needed help, and his niece so graciously took him to the location and asked, the pertinent questions about attaining information so her uncle could get placed within in that area. And she was told that it was for Spanish speaking only, and they don't cater to people who speak English. You know that, don't look shocked. I mean, you've heard me say that 100 times. I was taken back by that. The gentleman has since passed away, and I'm still hanging with a very heavy heart in reference to the way my friend and our city's friend was treated in his own community, because a facility that resides within our confines of our city limits did not allow him to go have help there where he needed it. And my other concerns were, I asked at the public hearing we had a couple of weeks ago, would you come back with a agenda of names? I don't need to know if they were of ethnic value. Are they all Spanish? Are they all non-Spanish? Are any English-speaking people allowed in the premises at this time? I'm concerned about that because there, as you made mention, learned attorney Cipolletta, that there's a tremendous need out there today. Adult care for seniors, it's a really necessary and required business, and we like to have that kind of activity. But me, and I know this city council, I speak for most of them, all of them, I would think, and certainly I speak for the Ward 1 councilor who's not able to be here this evening because of his own health problems, that we're concerned about these issues. And we're concerned about our community not being allowed in there because we don't speak Spanish. And that bothers me. And the thing that couples my injury with is that the Commonwealth of Massachusetts pays for 99% of the individuals who are being cared for in that location. Again, me as a taxpayer, I'm only speaking for myself, I pay my city, state taxes to help pay for people that my friends and myself aren't included with. That's not right, and it's not just. So I ask for those questions to relieve my mind of any problems that I have with it. And it's not suffice to say, yeah, we do let them in, but we don't have any. That clearly indicates to me that they're not wanted. You know, you don't have to be a rocket scientist to feel unwanted. And some people, if they get that presence when they go to that location, that's really not fair. What can we talk about that?
Well, to be honest,
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
I'm sorry. I'm in shock because I've been there for a year and a half, and our patients, the community that we have is a multicultural patient community, and we do have Americans. We do have English speakers with us right now. We also have people from Haiti. We have Brazilians. We have Spanish speakers. And I'm going to be honest to you, yeah, we do have 90% of our patients, they do speak Spanish. But we do have people who speak English. So to be honest, I'm really
So you mean
shocked.
to tell me there's only Spanish people that need help?
No. What I'm saying,
no English-speaking
everybody.
individuals?
No. Our doors are open for every single one who walks into the door. We have our employees are bilingual, so they are capable to work and to treat the patients from wherever they come from, because we have nurses that speak English, we have nurses that speak Brazilian, Spanish, Creole, we have one patient that speaks Creole, and we do have this staff for those patients. So what I'm saying is I'm surprised, to be honest, because our doors are open for every single one. We work for the community. It doesn't really matter where they're from.
This is the first time you heard me say this? You weren't here when...
No, I wasn't here, no.
There was somebody else?
I guess it was somebody else, yes.
And is that tall man still part of this business?
He's one of the owners.
Mm-hmm. He's still part of the business?
Yes, sir.
Mm-hmm. I got a feeling from him that I felt very, very uncomfortable with, to be honest with you. I mean, he didn't make me feel comfortable with whatever was happening there.
I want you to feel comfortable right now.
I don't feel comfortable.
He doesn't run the business. He just wants there. He
just
goes there
owns it.
once in a blue moon. I'm there all the time, and I'm surprised. Just what you just said is really surprise to me, because we don't reject people because they don't speak Spanish.
Okay, but the feeling I want to express is that do they feel welcome when they come to your...
Of course, and everybody that walks in,
Okay.
I'll try to approach them.
You say that, I can't deny that, I mean, if that's what you say, but one thing I will assure you, if it comes back again to me through any vehicle, that this is the practice, I'm going to really take every extreme method I can legally to close this.
I do
because I really
understand
don't
that.
appreciate that.
I
And
do.
I'm a representative of the people of this city of Revere, no matter where they live, and don't have to be in my ward. I feel very, very strong about that.
I do understand that.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Councilor Guanasso.
Put a very short tail on that, on Claudia's answer. She wasn't the manager at the time. I do remember that incident, and I believe I went down with a couple of the councilors. I believe Councilor Penter and a couple of others went down because the council was very, very concerned. Vicky, who's the blonde woman, who generally, she's one of the owners, she's the primary owner. She had a baby recently, and she's in Maryland, and as I said at the other hearing, she was not able to be here. She is very much an English speaker, and I think that's the woman with whom we had that dialogue once that complaint was investigated by Councilor Penta, Councilor Zambuto, and Councilor Guanasso, and I believe some of the councilors came down. But Vicky assures me, too, because I did alert her to that the morning after our hearing, that this was still an issue and it hadn't gone away. So she assures me that whatever the issue was then, it does not exist now.
Thank you, Mr. Cipolletta, and I would like to welcome Council President Zamboto to the chambers as well. Are there any other councilors that have any commentary or questions on this matter? Councilor Zamboto.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. There's still a lot left to be discussed. I think with the special permit, there's going to be some serious conditions put on this before I'll be able to sign on to it. You know, we've had parking issues. We've had a lot of, let's just say we have a lot of disturbed neighbors for what's gone on there in the past couple of years. Unfortunately, during the first special permit, we were negligent here with some of the conditions we did not put on this because we were so excited about the use. It was such a great use for the city to have an adult daycare, which is sorely needed. It's especially sorely needed if all our citizens can be part of it, as Councilor Guanasso put. So I think I'm in the process of at least mentally drafting some conditions, and I'm hoping that this is going to be continued on past this evening, obviously, so we can finalize some of those conditions. Thank you.
Well, Councilor Zambuto, to that point, I was remiss in not mentioning that site plan review has, in fact, as of February 11th, offered some suggestions for required conditions of the permitting. And the first is the parking lot must be striped to provide 22 parking spaces. There shall be no parking of vans or employee vehicles along Mill Street or Taft Street. 2, the plans must be stamped and approved by the fire department prior to the issuance of a building permit. And 3, a designated no parking fire lane must be maintained along the front of the building for accessibility at all times by the fire department and ambulance. I assume, Attorney Cipolletta, that these special permit recommendations from site plan review have been passed on to the engineers, and they have at this point considered them?
Indeed.
And they have no problem with them?
No, I think 2 of them are actually mandated, and the other 2, the striping and the no parking on the Mill Street or Taft, they assent to those. All
right, that's progress. I don't know if the Council Zambuto, if that addresses any of your issues.
It does address some of them. There are still some others, like hours of operation and are there Sundays, what's going on there on Sundays, and there's been some reports of for lack of a better word, parties or loud music, etc. I know there's a couple of neighbors from the area, and they can be clearer on some of the stuff that's been reported to me many times. So that would be some of the other issues.
Thank you, Councilor Zamboto. Any other councilors have any comments at this point or questions? Councilor Patch.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm not the ward councilor, but I would just, for the record, would like to say that I have heard the same complaints that Councilor Granasso has. As far as, are you saying that if I make a surprise visit at your establishment, that I'll be able to talk English to some of your patients?
Okay. And you'll be more than welcome.
Well, I'm certainly going to do it. And then the other issue is, I'm friendly, like I say, I'm not from that ward, but I grew up in that area, and I still got friends in that area that still live there. And what are the hours of operation?
The patients, well, the employees.
Patients, that's what it's supposed to be for, is the patients.
The patients, they start coming in at 8:30 and they leave around 2:30.
2:30 in the afternoon?
In the afternoon.
There's no evening
No.
functions?
Not at all.
You don't run it, how about weekends?
We do operate during the weekends, and it's the same hours
For patients?
for patients. Well, the employees will stay until 5, but the patients only until 2:30. They start leaving the building at 2:30.
You don't run a function hall there?
No.
Well, that's, I mean, it's been alleged by people from that area that there have been functions being held there and bands playing and maybe even some alcohol.
At nighttime?
No, yes, night and weekends.
No. We do provide, we bring them shows. I don't want to deny that. We've been bringing live music, but it's during the day. We have different entertainments from them, and one of them is at least once a month, we bring live music to the patients. But that's during the day, in the hours that they are there.
Okay. And also, I know on Taft Street, in the back there, in the back of your building, your employees don't park there?
We do. That's the parking space for the employees.
On Taft Street?
On the back of the building.
In the back of the building?
Mm-hmm. There. It is the driveway. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Okay, so is that what they're going to put a stop to? What streets?
No, I believe you're referring to the property itself accommodates the employee parking, not Taft Street itself.
No. Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Property. No, not the street. No.
Oh, I'm sorry.
No.
I took it the other way.
No.
Okay. All right. I'm sure that you're going to be. Is this going to be voted? This ain't going to be voted out.
Well, Councilor Powers would like to speak, but my inclination, and you brought up a very good point, given Councilor Penta's absence at this point, and I'm sure as the ward councilor and the subcommittee member, he may have some comments on this. My inclination would be to hold it for one more meeting in subcommittee based on that. Not that I want to hold you folks up, but I think the interest of the ward councilor would certainly be of benefit to all concerned and any questions that he might have. Personally, I'm very concerned about and I take you at your word that this is an 8:30 to 2:30 operation. If that were the case, and I thought that those hours were being adhered to, I would probably be much more comfortable with this. I'm sure Councilor Granasso might be more comfortable with this, as well as, and we take you at your word that this facility is open to anybody who should come there. It doesn't bother me at all that it's subscribed by people of speaking one particular language or not, as long as anybody who shows up the door and is otherwise qualified is accepted, and I'll take you at your word for that. But once again, I have an issue with Councilor Penta not being here. I'm very concerned about him voicing his opinion on this. But Councilor Powers, if you have any comments to make, we'd like to hear them at this point.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Ma'am, can you tell me right now, currently, where you're operating, how many clients you have in the course of a day in that building?
We're regulated by Mass Health, and we are allowed only to have 105 patients per day.
They're not all in that building at once, are they?
That's the maximum we can have a day.
Okay, now you're anticipating, if this were approved, how many clients would you be adding?
Well, to be honest, our main
I
goal.
want you to be honest, yes.
Our main goal is just to improve our benefits for the patients that we have right now.
So you're not,
To get more, well, if we do, I will assume there will be 20 to 25 more patients, but we don't know yet. But our main goal is just to provide more space for the patients that we have right now. To give more quiet room, more activities room. But that's for the patients that we have right now.
So right now, you're not anticipating adding any more clients to your register, is that correct?
Not yet, but if we do, I will say 20 to 25 patients. That will be the maximum per
And
day.
would the state have to approve that?
The state, we have to approve that, yes.
Okay, I'm a little troubled myself with the remarks of the concerns, rather, of Councilor Granasso. I mean, this is a city that is made up of many ethnicities, and we're that type of a city. We have been since many, many years, since ever I can remember. And I think that if any of these allegations are true, my feeling, if I were to find that this was true and documented, my feeling would be to just pull the license completely, close the place right down. That would be my feeling, because that's something that I don't think we should tolerate in this city. It's never been tolerated before, and it just sends me a bad message. And I agree with Councilor Reardon that I would like to wait until the ward councilor is here to voice his concerns or whatever objections he may have, if any. And so that's going to be my recommendation, not as certainly a member of the committee, because I'm not, but as a city councilor. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Councilor Powers. I am disposed to hold this in committee pending Councilor Penta's ability to join us, which hopefully will be soon. One comment I would like to make is, as regards our city's ethnicity, this city has been as open to all ethnic groups, religions, races, more so than pretty much, I would guess, any city in the Commonwealth of Massachusetts. And we're not only are we comfortable with that, we're in fact proud of it. But it cuts both ways. It's important that everybody understands tolerance, and tolerance means openness to everyone, and everyone meaning everyone. Those are my comments, but again, I think we'd like to hold this. What I will do is I will determine at some point when Councilor Penta will be able to join us next, and we'll schedule another meeting. You might want to make yourself available. I'll give you as much notice through the city clerk's office as I possibly can. Because other than that, I think, as you hear, we all recognize that a facility such as this has value to our community, as long as it falls within the parameters of our neighborhood, as well as our openness, and our tolerance for all persons. So thank you very much, and I'll have the city clerk call you, Jim.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
And we do recognize that Councilor Penta from day one has been completely immersed in all of the issues here, and I think his input is very important. So I do understand the subcommittee's concern. Thank you.
In one moment, I would like to offer the opportunity to speak if there's anybody in the audience that would like to speak about this at this point. Well, I assume that no one was. So thank you. That this matter will be tabled in the subcommittee pending a meeting when Councilor Penta can be available. The last matter on the agenda this evening is actually the first matter on the agenda, PUD-14-01, 29 Thayer Avenue Development, LLC, 35 Gove Street, Boston, requesting permission from the Revere City Council to construct a planned unit development comprising 42 residential condominium units within the light industrial district on 29 Thayer Avenue, Revere, Massachusetts. And once again, I ask that the applicant please give us a brief presentation.
Mr. Chairman, thank you, honorable members of the subcommittee. James Sippoletta, 385 Broadway, Revere, attorney for the petitioner. With me this evening is one of the partners, Joel DeLuca, who is seated in the front row. And The civil engineer on the project, whom you all know, is Rick Salvo from Engineering Alliance, and he's setting up his boards as we speak. The council will remember that a couple of weeks ago we had a public hearing on our application for a 42-unit building comprised of residential condos and the rebuilding of the marina at 29th Thayer Avenue. There were several technical questions that arose during the presentation then, and we went back to study them and asked Rick to come up with some calculations. I believe, also pointed up, and I would think it's important at this juncture as well to emphasize that no matter what, the process doesn't stop here, and that there are several other boards, committees, administrative bodies, bureaus, both at the municipal, the state, and the federal level that need to vet this project. And by the time any project of this nature or size is done and comes out the other end, it very rarely looks the way it did when it went in. Some of those agencies, first and foremost, locally would be the Conservation Commission, because of the proximity to the Pines River and the storm flowage situation that exists down in the area. The level of the elevation of the property and so forth. This is what conservation commissions were created for. That will be a protracted, I'm sure, proceeding. Then there is the Department of Environmental Protection for the same reason, but we have to visit two of the DEP divisions. One is the one that protects the wetlands, and the other is the one that regulates what happens on the water and the navigable waterways. Since the marina is a major component of this, the DEP waterways, or otherwise known as the Chapter 91 division, needs to take hold of it as well, and they will determine what happens or doesn't happen on the water side, whereas DEP, as we're more familiar with DEP, would determine what happens or will not happen. Land side, also looming over the horizon, we expect, as we did with the Atlantis Marina, which is a larger scale model of sort of what we have here, is the Army Corps of Engineers, and they have jurisdiction in the navigable waterways and would have say on what would occur on that part of the Pines River. That would be it, Mr. Chairman, in a nutshell. We had indicated to the council of the whole during our presentation that we are mindful of the type of residential units that the city can absorb and the ancillary issues that might arise due to that. These are targeted to the empty nest or the young professional type people. They are small condominium units, 1 bedroom and 2 bedroom, or 1 bedroom with a den. People who might want to easy access to Boston, who could possibly work at home 1 or 2 days a week, and they have a small study or an office. I believe that we also told the council, and I would reiterate because we went back and we checked it again. This is modeled, and it's a very downscale model of what we did at Atlantis Marina in Winthrop. And there is not one school-age child in that facility in Atlantis Marina in Winthrop. I know that is a concern. I know what the condition of the schools, the school department in the budget is, and we're mindful of that. That is not our target. I'm sure that the questions that the council has and also the neighbors and the abutters who are in attendance are more of the technical nature than the zoning nature. So with the chairman's permission, I would like to ask permission for Rick Salvo to answer the questions that the council may have.
Certainly. Thank you. Sir. And at this point, while we respect the right of people to speak on this, I'm going to once again allow the proponents, the petitioners, to answer the questions of the City Council in the hope that any questions that would be asked by all of you would be answered ahead of time based on the certain amount of expertise the City Council has. So please, Mr. Salvo, whatever you'd like to say.
Thank you. Just move over here.
Thank you again, Mr. Chairman. For the record, my name is Rick Salvo with Engineering Alliance, office at 194 Central Street in Saugus, Mass. I'd just like to run through again, just to sort of refresh everybody's memory of the brief presentation that we gave the last time about the general existing conditions that exist on the property today, as well as the proposed site layout. What you see here is obviously an aerial photograph. It's circa 2008. It was obtained by MassGIS, and I think it gives a pretty good sort of depiction of the property as it exists in its surrounding area. The property obviously is known as 29 Thayer Avenue. It fronts on two streets. It fronts on Hayes Avenue, has approximately 200 feet of frontage on Hayes Avenue. It also fronts on Thayer Avenue and has about 250 feet of frontage on Thayer Avenue. Also fronts along a piece of property that's adjacent to the Pines River, which is also 200. So the lot is 200 feet by 250 feet, which makes for a total lot area of about 50,000 square feet, or 1.15 acres. The elevation of Thayer Avenue, and incidentally, this lot we did have surveyed by Medford Engineering and Survey. The datum for the survey was NGVD 1929, whereas if you look at the current FEMA maps, they're on a different datum of NAVD 88, so there's about an 0.8 difference between the numbers. So if I'm going to talk in numbers of the survey, which is on the NGVD 1929, so in case any numbers sound different for any of you that may have had the chance to take a look at the FEMA maps. At any rate, the floodplain elevation in this area is right about elevation 10. If you look at a FEMA map, it says elevation 9, thus the datum difference between the two datums. Thayer Avenue itself is about elevation 8. The site itself ranges from about elevation 8 to about elevation 7.5. Anyone that's been down there knows that this site is a relatively flat site, currently occupied by this large building in the front, which is a pre-existing non-conforming structure. The remainder of the site has been used in the past for boat storage. That said, this is a coastal floodplain. And just to kind of indulge that for a moment here, the Wetlands Protection Act has jurisdiction over all floodplains. There's two different types of floodplains in the Wetlands Protection Act. There's a coastal floodplain and there's an inland floodplain. Coastal floodplains are known as land subject to coastal storm flowage, which is the resource area that this particular site is located in. They're treated very differently under the Wetlands Protection Act because coastal floodplains, the tributary watershed area to them is the Atlantic Ocean. So no matter what happens on that property, that Atlantic Ocean can provide almost an infinite amount of water, which will cause a flooding situation. So in this particular case, FEMA says that the floodplain is about elevation 10. So regardless of what elevation any of these landforms are around here, given the fact that the tributary watershed area is the Atlantic Ocean, that entire area would flood to elevation 10. Whereas if you were to compare it to an inland floodplain, inland floodplains only have a finite amount of water, whether it be a pond or a river. So those particular floodplains have very different requirements because any change in elevation to a landform in an inland floodplain can have a negative effect on adjacent properties. That said, if I just switch over to this figure here, actually just to kind of give you the glimpse in the same fashion here, shows the site, the layout of the building, the layout of the parking relative to the entire neighborhood. As you can see on the left side of the plan is basically the extent of the Point of Pines neighborhood. To the right side of the plan is the adjacent ball field, and then down gradient from that is the tow yard and that particular commercial area. If I switch over to this graphic here, just to sort of run through the layout. Here again, the lot is comprised of 50,000 square feet. Just to run through the zoning table summarized on your plans, the minimum lot size is 25,000 square feet. This particular proposal includes 50,000 square feet. The minimum amount of frontage is 100 feet. The minimum frontage we have is 200 feet along Hayes, 250 feet along Thayer Ave. So obviously, this particular piece of property far exceeds both the frontage requirement as well as the lot area requirement. The minimum front yard setback is 35 feet. We provide 35 feet. The minimum side yard setback is 20 feet. This particular building has provided 20 feet. The rear yard setback is 20 feet. Here again, we're providing 20 feet. And the maximum height is 100 feet. That's allowed by zoning. This building, I think, is proposed to be somewhere between 40 and 50 feet. So it's well under the requirement of the 100 feet. There's also a minimum usable open space requirement of 10%. This particular lot, as you can see all the green space around it, has 25.3. So here again, it exceeds the minimum open space requirement by almost double. I thought worth mentioning would be the lot coverage, even though there is not a lot coverage requirement for this particular zone. This building covers about 39% of the lot. Here again, there is no zoning requirement for that. The building footprint's about 19,600 square feet. It's 70 feet in this direction, 145 feet in this direction, 205 feet in this direction. We are proposing this building to be up on piles, as you saw by the rendering that was submitted. That would allow for the entrance or entry for any floodwaters that would come into the property. At this point in time, we are proposing to raise the parking elevation from about elevation 7.5 or 8 to about elevation 11, all pitching back towards the Pines River. We're proposing a catch basin in the back corner of the parking lot and a large subsurface detention facility so that on surface water events or rain events, any water that hits this property, there's a net reduction in both the rate of runoff as well as the volume of stormwater that is discharged from the property. The subsurface detention facility is comprised of 19 rows of 12-inch perforated pipe, 150 feet long, has a capacity of about 48,548 gallons of water, all underground to promote groundwater recharge. As you know, this site right now currently isn't paved. Water is allowed to infiltrate through the site when it rains. We want to be able to promote that in the post-development condition after there's a building footprint and pavement put on it, and that's why that particular feature was chosen. As I said, flooding events that happen from the Pine River side will continue to flood, and they'll continue to flood to whatever elevation that particular storm surge floods to. In terms of utility connections, we are proposing to connect to the municipal mains. I just switched to that sheet real quick. Right out in this vicinity of Thayer Ave, we're proposing a 6-inch fire service, a 2-inch domestic water service, underground telephone, electric and cable, and a proposed gas service. Here again, access into the site will be via this driveway right here, access into the surface lot through this area here, access into the building in this dedicated driveway to provide access underneath the building, through the site, and then back out of the building. That's essentially the way the site lays out. To Attorney Cipoletta's points, I mean, there's obviously a lot of other processes that will go into significant depth relative to stormwater management, floodplain management, and that sort of thing. Obviously, the Conservation Commission has purview over those particular resource areas, as does your site plan review, and I'm sure the city engineer will be taking a hard look at the calculations that we prepare In addition, this will require a construction general permit under the National Pollution Discharge Elimination Systems regulations that are regulated by the EPA. And like I said, we're going to have the notice of intent and the site plan review, both of which will be public processes. So I guess with that, I'd turn it back to the City Council for whatever questions or comments you have.
Thank you, sir. That was very informative. I'll open it now to the subcommittee members if they have any questions in particular, and then to the rest of the City Council, and then we will seek commentary and/or questions from the public. So, who wants to go first?
Mr. Chairman.
Yes, sir. Councilor Ganasso.
Thank you. The obvious is, in my mind, is this is going to be an impact on the on what I see is one of the nicest locations within our community. Many years back, I sought to purchase a property there. That was probably 45 years ago, and so in those days, I selected it as a nice place to live. And as I go down there today, I would feel the same way. And nothing has changed. It's been a beautiful area to live in. Unfortunately, they go through the pains of the flooding, and they experience that. And they willingly do so because they still live there, most of them. What this would do in terms of traffic would be, you're talking 48 units, within reason, 84 vehicles. Make mention of a speed hump on the middle of the street here to calm the traffic. I'm very concerned about the traffic that would be going to that location. I'm very concerned about the impact it would place on that community, not with the continuity that exists there. They have all low-lying community, nice residential living. In the midst of it, you're now going to put this pretty large structure known as, and I'm not against condominiums, by the way. I'm not against them at all, given the proper location. And I'm not certain that this is the proper location. Am I mindful for the fact that that boatyard needs repair? Yes. And maybe this is brought to light what we as a community, as a city council, should make this proper agencies within our city go down and do the job to make sure it's cleaned, make sure it's updated, and make sure that it's not offensive to anybody, especially those the commuters that travel and traverse the Pines River. It's a gorgeous, beautiful spot. I used to fish for stripers there, me and my brother-in-law, and my son would go down there and enjoy an evening on Pines River. Nothing better. And to preserve that kind of quality, to preserve that kind of lifestyle that we've been so accustomed to, I'm not so certain that this development is that. So with that traffic in mind, and they made mention of it in Section 8 here in reference to the traffic impact study, that this will come, Mr. Chairman, sometime thereafter we vote on this. So we won't know the results of this impact study after we vote on it. And after we vote on it, so it goes to another agency. But we didn't get our impact study in yet. We haven't received it yet. It's part of the conditions and what they spell out in Section 8. So there's a lot to be reviewed here, and as the learned attorney Cipolletta stated, this is one of many steps that they must take to the green pasture, to the ending force. But it would be derelict of our responsibilities not to question it right now as to what the traffic would be. What kind of an impact would this be on the area? What kind of change would this be to this area that would be so dramatic that it changed the impact of the whole area and the selection of someone in the future to want to live there? That's the questions I would drive. And so with that, I have many more questions, and I know there's many councils that have concerns, and they have their issues to review. I would just like, Mr. Chairman, that be mindful that I might speak again on it, but as the time requires. But at this point, I would just like to say that I'm concerned about the traffic impact, and I'm concerned about the density and the impact it would make in the living conditions that already exist there. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Councilor Ganasso. I would assume that your question, given lack of a traffic impact study was somewhat rhetorical, but I'll ask the engineer if he has any information regarding that.
I do. Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. And I apologize. The traffic engineer unfortunately could not be here this evening as she's away at school vacation week. I certainly am not a traffic engineer, but we did retain the services of Conley Associates to do a traffic impact analysis. And I know we did submit a traffic study of the site plan review. I don't know why it didn't make it to this board, but I think it would be prudent for us to get that together and get it distributed to the board. But just, I guess, quickly to just sort of scratch the surface and just share with you the conclusion section of that particular study, which might shed a little bit of light. And then, obviously, she would need to provide the more detailed information. But if I just read from the conclusion, it says the proposed residential development during the weekday peak will produce 28 vehicle trips during the weekday AM peak hour, with 5 trips entering and 23 trips exiting, and 33 vehicle trips during the weekday and PM peak hour, which is 22 trips entering and 11 trips exiting. And I know that they studied, and at one point in time, the site plan review had asked them to expand the scope of their study and look at a lot of different intersections. But the final conclusion is the addition of these trips to the study area intersection is not expected to have a significant effect on traffic operations. In fact, the intersection delays are expected to increase less than 1 second per vehicle. And I guess just to add to that, those peak hour trips obviously don't address the weekday daily trips, which obviously those numbers probably sound small to most of you for a 42-unit development. But the residential development over the course of a weekday is expected to generate 338 vehicle trips. It's their standard practice, obviously, to look at the AM and PM peaks because that's when the most amount of conflicts occur. But I think at this point in time, it'd be prudent. As I said, I'm not the traffic engineer, but through Attorney Cipolletta, we'll make sure that report gets through to you.
Mr. Chairman.
Councilor Gonzalez.
One aspect of this, so you're suggesting that out of the 42 units, only half of them will leave on the weekend and to go outside?
It's during during the AM and PM peaks. Okay.
So it means 50% of those residents won't be doing anything at peak hour.
It is 28 vehicle trips. Yeah, that's correct. So during that peak hour, that's correct, and that's from the ITE trip generation manual. That's kind
of surprising, based on the fact that this would probably be what you told us, not you, but others have told us, that this is going to be for a working community, it's going to be for business people, and for them not to leave their home. I don't know what kind of business they're going to be in, but they're going to have to leave their home to do something. And that concerns me because of the 50% ratio. But that's just the point I make. It's as trivial as it might seem. It gives another question in my mind as to, I've been on this council a long time. I've reviewed impact studies, traffic-wise, and 90% of my concentration has always been with the applicant based on the fact that the neighborhood didn't really have a valid reason to be upset about. But in this particular case, it's different because it's in a compacted area. Absolutely. It's not in a highway area. It's a compacted area, very highly residential. That's a big difference, in my opinion, with an impact study.
Okay.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Councilor Gonzalez. I'm as uncomfortable with asking Mr. Silva to comment on traffic engineering issues when he's not one, and that nor am I. And we don't have the one who is here, and that is leading me towards a certain conclusion at this point. But I'm going to listen to what the rest of the City Council has to say. Councilor Zambuto, we'll work this way.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I think it's foolish to ask this gentleman about traffic. I certainly want to hear from an expert on the traffic because I'm not going to be satisfied until there's someone can certify this kind of at this point we're just speculating on what would happen. So I want somebody's name on the dotted line if we're to take this as seriously. So I don't know when that person is available or whatever, but I'd certainly want to talk to him. Thank you.
I agree, Councilor, for the purpose of fully vetting this issue and giving everybody a fair opportunity to analyze this. It seems to me traffic being one of the major issues that to assess it without dealing with that issue seems somewhat incongruous. Attorney Cipollone?
Yes, Mr. Chairman, and not having children, I don't keep as close an eye on these school vacations as perhaps some of the our colleagues, Mr. Chairman, and some of the professionals who we have on our staff. I know that that Jen Connolly has gone out of state with her children and was not able to be here tonight. In fact, it may be partially my fault as well. After the last city council meeting where we had the public hearing, I had estimated the subcommittee meeting to be on a Monday night on a different week. So when I was able to get word back to her, it filtered back for me that this was school vacation and she's not available. However, she's very competent and she's very availing and would be able to truly and accurately answer any questions that the councilors and others may have. And I do feel a little bit disadvantaged, but I didn't want to necessarily ask for formally a continuance of tonight's meeting because I know that there are a number of people who were planning on vetting other issues as well. So I thought it best, Mr. Chairman, to get out of the way as many of the issues as we could and as many aspects of the project as we're able, and then whatever we need to tie up later, I would assent to waiving and excluding the number of days under Chapter 40A to come back at another time when the professional is available.
I'm not sure that we're there yet because we're only a couple of weeks out from the subcommittee meeting, but we'll take you up on that if necessary. And I appreciate the fact that it's difficult to get given the nature of this project, as your engineer has discussed, the number of issues that have to be addressed. I appreciate the fact that it's not always easy to get everybody here for a single meeting. So it is going to be my thought to keep this in the subcommittee pending that. But at the same time, I understand that everybody here has something to say about it. And as you suggest, we should try to get as many issues on the floor and in front of us as possible this evening. And with respect to the people who here will want to comment, if they would like to speak their piece tonight and then come back at another date, they can do that. But I'm certainly not going to suggest that they should just come back on another day. So if there are any of the city councils that have any comments at this point, Councilor Patch.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Jim, what are the 84 parking places? 84. Yes. Is he going to build a marina there also?
Yes, the marina, as you probably know, at one time was a good working marina. It's not so much now. This being a planned unit development, it has two components to it. It has the waterside component, which is the marina, and it has the land side, which is the condominium. And the plan is to completely rebuild, not repair, rebuild the marina in concert with the construction.
Now, these will be, people will be able to rent slips at this marina?
Yes.
Where will they park?
Well, there were a couple of different scenarios that we're looking at. And I keep mentioning Atlantis Marina in Winthrop because it's the last one that I did with these gentlemen, and it worked out very well, is that, number one, the marina is a seasonal business. Secondly, we're looking at the possibility of allocating a certain number of slips, as we would parking spaces, say, to deed to the owners. So we're not quite there yet, and I think that's probably a marketing issue, but we've been very well and able to accommodate parking on site at Atlantis for the marina and the condos. So the other thing, and I think Rick may have touched upon it, and I've heard between the last meeting and this from friends who watch it on television. No, it's not underground parking. It's under the building parking, and I just want to make sure that but that is well understood. In Atlantis, we actually do have underground parking where you drive down. You have 2 levels below, so we're able to deed those spaces as well.
All right, well, I might have been mistaken, but at the public hearing, are you doing a boat launch there too also? Like they can launch their boat into the...
Yes, we actually began talking to the city of Revere about this 2 or 3 years ago, and we had met with then Mayor Ambrosino. We've met with current Mayor Rizzo and his professional staff. Back a couple of years ago, the former mayor asked us if we would be willing to rebuild that launch ramp that is used by people down in the Pines area. Not necessarily to make it a public launch ramp for everybody on the North Shore, but apparently there was one there that existed and had become fallen to disrepair. I believe it's on city property. We made the commitment then, and we are following through with the commitment now to repair the seawall and to repair the launch ramp.
Will there be parking there for cars and trailers?
I'm not sure, and I'm not sure that there is now. I don't know what the situation is now, or whether you can actually launch a boat there.
Well, I really don't think it adds up, the parking places with all this activity. Marina, boat launch. That's actually, Councilor Granato, that's my major, first of all, I want to thank all the people that called me and emailed me. I did try to, I think I talked to everybody that called me and for and against. You know, this building, the building in Winthrop is a beautiful building, Atlantis. Actually, this is a beautiful building too. But my problem is that I wish the developer does a fine job with the buildings, but I was hoping that through all this time that something would have been more, it would have been smaller in size, and I just don't. I just have problems with it, mainly with the parking, the traffic. Because again, if people are going to rent it, it's probably going to be 2 people in a condo, so you're going to have 2 cars. They're probably going to get up in the morning, go to work in Boston, come home at the same time. I just don't know how the area itself can handle that.
Right. We were served up that question by site plan review as well, and Frank Stringy's concern was just that. This proposal began as a much larger proposal, and then it was reduced to 60-something, and now it's down to 42. We've had quite a bit of success at marketing to, and I mentioned the empty nesters. You know, here's something where you don't need to go out and shovel your snow. You don't need to mow your lawn. You don't need to do all of those things that we've been doing here all our lives. So to your point, and also to Councilor Granaso's point, yes, there are a certain number of young professionals who now, believe it or not, the stats in the studies show that they're moving to smaller and smaller quarters, fewer square foot units. So the units are fairly small. So yes, those people may be going to Boston, and some of them may be working from home, and they may be telecommuters, and they may like I do. I don't leave at 9 o'clock or 8 o'clock every morning. We leave at different times depending on where we need to go. But the other segment of the population is the person who is now, the children have gone out, the grandchildren are a little bit grown, and they don't need the backyard and swings and all of what they have, and they move into this kind of a condominium where it's safe, it's secure, it's theirs, and they're not working. Or maybe only one of the couples works. They're there for part of the year, and they're in Florida during the winter. That's what we've been finding, and we found it specifically in Winthrop, again, at Atlantis. And we were put through all of those studies there. And so when I speak to those numbers are fairly fresh because that's a new building. And it's essentially the same population, it's the same demographic who would be interested in this building.
Okay. Well, I still need some more, Mr. Chairman, I think I need some more time on this because I got some serious problems with it, and I would want to see a traffic study. And I actually got my own. I know from working that area that I know how congested. I mean, it's just a small area by itself. It's not like Pleasant Street in Winthrop. It's not, and plus you're not getting 2 levels of parking on the ground, and you're not getting. There's a lot, he had a lot of pluses there that he could do that he can't do here, and I just have some problems with it. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Councilor Patch. Councilor Novoselsky.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Chairman, may I say that everybody's talking about the Atlantis and Winthrop, and yes, it is a beautiful project. They did a great job with it, but you can't compare that with putting this in this neighborhood. And they have a lot more room out there. They get more accessibility, and just talking about the traffic, actually I see 2 ways into the area. Mills Ave and the people coming up North Shore Road southbound are going to shoot down John Ave. They're not going to go down to Mills Ave and come around. They're going to take the shortest route. We all do the same thing. So I see a lot more traffic on John Ave. And with the families that are down there, there's, I think, 8 to 10 families down there. Something's due to happen. You try not to do things, but I foresee that being a bad scenario right there. I don't see them going down River because it's blocked by, that island between North Shore Road and Hayes Ave. So John Ave is going to be a main thoroughfare for the southbound traffic on North Shore Road. But a lot of my items were brought up between Councilor Quinasso and Councilor Patch, the marina. One thing on the elevation that bothered me, it was noted that the elevation now is approximately 7.5 to 8, and it's going up to 11. As far as I'm concerned, that's blocking the water that's coming on to Mills Ave. I was down there on January 3rd when it flooded. Forget about it. I don't know how those people live down there with that type of scenario going on. There was 2 feet of water coming over that area from the riverside, from Saugus River over to the drainage area. There was no road to drive on. It was terrible. Now, you think that these people are put at risk because that are living there. Now you're putting 42 more families at risk by putting them in that area. In case there's flooding, they're going to be stuck there also. Fire department won't be able to get there other than boats. And with the way the wind blows down there, it's going to be difficult to operate a boat there in that type of scenario. It was mentioned about many other steps going through. Now, there was a gentleman that tried to put up a project on the other side, okay, Jay Espimos. Well, he's just about abandoned that because the amount of hoops he had to jump through with DEP and EPA and DCR and every alphabet letter you can think of. Now, he's looking to sell that project, I'm sure. And I'm afraid that's what's going to happen with this project. It's going to get sold to somebody else that won't have the feeling of our input right now. They're going to be taking it over secondhand and maybe third hand. I have a problem with the marina and the parking. I don't see it. I don't see it. Deeding spaces, that's going to turn into rentals, people renting their spaces. It's going on already in a lot of condominiums around the city now. You're not supposed to be renting deeded spaces. It's there because of the two spaces per unit or 1.5 spaces per unit. And they shouldn't be doing that. I've told condominiums in my neighborhoods, they're not supposed to be doing that because they're complaining about people leaving their cars there all the time. That's a problem. The launch area, again, it's part of the marina and parking. Normally, I used to own a boat. When I wanted to launch my boat, I used to take my trailer, unhook it from my truck, park it in the parking lot, go out and have a nice day in the water. There's no room for trailers to be parked there. Not from what I see.
If I just may pick up on that, that's the city's launch, that's not our launch.
But that's the launch. But we don't even have parking for that. And they're going to want to park in this property's parking spaces, whatever's there, which is little to none. And I think the last item I have to say is I want to talk about mitigation, water, sewer. I know it's been mentioned by numerous people about the poor system that they have down in the neighborhood. What's planned for the mitigation on the water sewer package?
Well, we had looked at this as part of the area when we did the Ocean Club, and we had a number of studies, both by the developer and his contractors and the city and the people that were involved with them. There was a certain amount of difficulty down behind the beach. And I think this all sort of feeds into the same thing, the same source, or the same receptacle system. What DPW found after they scoped it, they put the camera down there, is that they pulled out an old American telephone and telegraph pole out of the pipe that had, according to Donnie, I think, it occluded about the pipe by about 85%. So that improved the flowage a little bit. I think the city engineer is going to dictate to us what we need to do, because as the cycle of the process is completed, where you ultimately end up is back to the site plan review committee, which is the city's professional staff, and the city engineer then will figure out what's going to satisfy him before a building permit is issued. We've already had some preliminary discussions with Nick, the engineer, but by no means is that the end. I just wanted to insert one other footnote to the parking, is that the site plan review committee had counted up the number of slips, the number of units, and the number of parking spaces, and did the calculation in accordance with the current zoning ordinance, and determined that we have sufficient parking and we do not need a variance. So they counted in the slips, which is the marina component, and they counted in the residential component and the required parking for that, and determined that we meet or exceed the requirement.
Thank you, Councilor. In response to that, I have seen the site plan review report on some of the waste flow water and that stuff. So, but one of the problems that I have is that we're not getting all the information. We're getting it piecemeal. Some of it comes up for us, like in a situation today, but then there's more information that comes up later on that we may not like, and it's kind of shoved down our throats that we made a decision, whether it's pro or con, on only partial information. Personally, you and I have spoken before. I like to get everything that's going to be put in front of me to make that proper decision. This traffic study that's ongoing, I didn't like the sound of what I heard, honestly, but I'll wait to hear from the traffic engineer. But I do have some issues. I've received a lot of phone calls and emails, just like all the other councilors, and a lot of them are my friends, and knowing the neighborhoods and those people that live down there, You know, right now, I have a problem with this package. You know, I would consider that you go look at J. Espinosa's property to run it and move over there and instead of, you know, bothering these people over here. So that's my play for now, and I'll go with the will of the committee at this time. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Novoselsky. Councilor Arrigo.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I just have a couple of questions. When we talk about the marina, how many slips are we talking about? Do you have any idea?
Off the top of my head, I don't know what the slip count is. We did propose it to site plan review. I'm sorry, 29.
29?
Thank you, Joel.
Okay.
Yes, 29.
And the idea would be that they would be, the majority of them would be deeded out to, or given first preference to the residents who are living there.
That would be the perfect scenario. That's the target.
Okay. And as far as the units themselves, it sounds like they're going to be condos. Is that?
Yes.
Okay. Because we've heard, and I know the council has heard in general about how the market for the city right now is geared towards rental units, and that there are folks who don't want to build condos because they say that the market is driving rental units. So this is a little, I know it's probably a smaller project, especially than what we're looking at on Waterfront Square, but in my mind, looking at the city holistically, comprehensively, we're looking at 900 units potentially coming online down there. I don't think that we need any new residential personally. I think that residential units can be a burden on the tax base and don't generate as much revenue as commercial property. And I think that's, you know, everybody kind of agrees with that. But when we get proposals like this, we have to think, I think we have to start thinking comprehensively. And we have to start thinking, or we have to start being a little bit picky. I mean, we're going to be a community that hopefully, if we, you know, end up getting a casino, we're going to have a lot of attention from developers. And we can't bite on the first, you know, plan that's put up before us. We have to be a little bit picky. We have to say, you know, is this what we see and what we envision being the right thing for the city, for the community, for the neighborhood, and really trying to be, I think, a little bit more proactive and a little more well thought out in our planning process. But I do have some reservations. The traffic is obviously a concern. It will be interesting to get the traffic study. One other technical thing that you mentioned earlier was that the pitch from the parking lot would be going towards Mills Ave. Is that so? Like that it would be pitched towards the river. Okay, so would that? I'm just thinking of the area. Would that cause more issues down Mills Ave? So the folks that are getting flooded now, Elaine being one of them, is that flooding going to be going further down Mills Ave so they could get down towards, you know, a couple more houses down? Is that what we would end up seeing?
So Mills Ave is located at the top of the page right here. There is no proposed change to any of this grading in this particular area over here. We'd be back at grade over here. Would be higher at this back portion. So this would all pitch
it's still
forward.
going to it'll be pitching towards. I mean, it'll pitch towards, and then ultimately, will that? I'm saying, will that cause more flooding further down Mills Ave? So if your water isn't going to just go straight.
Well, I guess
water kind of will.
Sure, I guess
totally encompass the area. So
I guess it depends on what kind of flooding that we're talking about. Okay, if we're talking about surface water, stormwater runoff flooding, which is a very different type of flooding than storm surge and that associated with that of the Pines River. Runoff that comes off of this site will be mitigated, but I don't think that kind of runoff is really the type of flooding that's really experienced down there on a regular basis. It's really, my sense is it's that storm surge flooding that comes from the Pines River side. Like I said, that being the case, there is an infinite wall of water that's coming in this direction. You know, based on my expertise, I'd submit to you that no matter what happens to this property, that flooding situation from that event coming from that side, will continue to flood regardless of what happens on this property.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Chairman, just to wrap up, I do think that we should probably, although I'm not a member of the committee, I would hope that the committee would decide to hold on to this for a little bit. It sounds like that's going to be the case. But we do have to think about, not making decisions in a vacuum, having complete information, and thinking, I think, a little bit more comprehensively when we have proposals that come up before us. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Councilor Arrigo. Councilor Morabito.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. First concern is from the people. Just like every other councilor here, I received many emails, letters, phone calls. To mute the people of Point-à-Pines and not let their voice be heard would just be completely wrong. I wouldn't be doing my job to be their voice. Councilor Novoselsky brought up various amount of variety of legitimate concerns, as well as Councilor Arrigo. I think you're going to have you have Vanguard apartment buildings that will be opening up. That's going to add to the traffic. You have a building that the proposed building is for young professionals. When do they travel at peak hours to go to and from work? These are issues that we have to keep in mind. When do these young professionals have off the weekend? When is the bulk of our traffic weekend? So I think we should hold off and wait until we have a traffic engineer. And I think there's a lot of concerns that we all brought forward, and we need answers. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Morabito. At this juncture, I have discussed the matter with Councilor Powers, and given that he's the ward councilor, I'm going to allow him to defer his comments until after we've heard from you folks out there. So the ground rules are simple. We typically have, I'm sorry. Councilor Janino, I'm sorry. I thought you were deferring yourself. Please.
Nope. So I think that a lot of really interesting points have been brought up tonight, and I think that traffic was a really important one. I know I commute down North Shore Road twice a day, almost every day of the week, and you have cars flying 70, 80 miles an hour down there. I don't care what anyone says. I pass them. Well, I watch them, but... All right, so anyway, it's definitely an issue, and those are tight turns coming off of North Shore Road, so you're going to see a lot of traffic in that area. So I definitely do want to see a study, not only of actual volume of traffic, but speed and how that would impact the area. As far as the development goes, I do think that the project looks really nice, and they are first-class developers, and it would be nice to see a new marina down there. We heard from some of the fishing communities and people that live down there that do fish, and it's something that we do need, but the bottom line is a lot of the people in the community aren't too positive about it, and the majority of the feedback I have got has been negative. So I am very curious to see what comes up tonight and what the rest of the community has to say about the issue. And the one thing I do have to say is what bothers me about this, as some of the other councilors has mentioned, is the alternative. You know, if this is a residential community, so if this doesn't come, what will? Because it's zoned that it can be many, many things, and it doesn't have to be residential. So I just keep that in the back of my mind. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Janino. So back to what I was suggesting earlier, the ground rules are that if you could kindly adhere to a 3-minute limit, all of you want to speak. I'm here to listen to you all. I would also ask that you, I should say we are here to listen to you all. I would also ask that you try your best not to be overly redundant. I think a point made and remade is probably enough. And I'm not going to I'm not going to start turning the clock on unless it gets out of hand. But I do reserve the right to cut off those who either start speaking about extraneous matters or go beyond the point. So please, raise your hand if you'd like to speak and approach the microphone. And assuming the batteries are still working, turn it on and give your name and your address and tell us what you think about this project from what you've heard so far. Who's first? Anybody? Stand up. Some of these people up here are hungry, so if you don't get up there quick. State your name and address, please.
Uh-oh. Okay, thank you very much. My name is Loretta LaCentra. I live at 30 John Avenue in the Riverside. I've lived there for 30 years. My husband's family has 4 generations that go back to the Riverside. I've spoken with many of my neighbors regarding this condo proposal, and there is an overwhelming opposition to it. My husband will present to you a petition tonight that will prove that the proposal has very little support in the neighborhood. I'd like to make a few points. I'm going to try and make this as short as possible. Here's what I see happening when you issue the special permit for this condominium, and we need to start with the building process itself. We will put up with large construction vehicles, including trucks, backhoes, and cranes that will rumble through our quiet neighborhood daily, leaving behind diesel fumes and dust. This construction equipment, as well as workers' vehicles, will clog narrow Thayer Ave and create hazardous conditions for those of us on our way to Gibson Park. Many of the families in the neighborhood do go there. They bring their children there to play. They walk their dogs. The construction creates noise and dust, but what concerns me most is what is in that dust. The site has been a boatyard for over 80 years. The soil there is certainly contaminated with oil, gasoline, paint thinner, toxic boat paint, and varnish. This dust and ash will be spread throughout the area during the construction, and it could cause toxicity in the area and serious health risks to all the residents there. I would ask that before you even consider issuing this permit, that you at least require an environmental study of the site and its potential health impact on every resident. Moving on during the building process is the pile driving that's going to be required. I lived through the building of 190 North Shore Road, and its incessant pile driving that went on for months. The constant rumbling, slamming, and vibration from the pile driving not only caused cracked ceilings and foundations, but it threatened to drive all of us insane. I imagine that the construction will go on during the summer months when we all want to be outdoors but won't be able to because of the noise and the dust. Okay, so now we have the condo and it's built, so this is what we have to look forward to. Property values that will go down and then increased need for city services. Upwards of 80 additional cars per day will use Mills Ave. I live on John Ave, and that will be the cut-through from people coming south on North Shore Road. I know that they've argued that these trips are spread out during the day, but the point is 80 additional cars are making multiple trips through Mills Ave with the speeding that goes with that, and I just suggest that the dog walkers and the children look out. We also have more on-street, we're going to expect more on-street parking that will fan out from the condominium, taking up very limited existing on-street parking spaces because there is not enough parking to accommodate all residents and their guests. Maybe on some days there will be enough on-street, on-site parking, but I guarantee you there will be other days when there won't be. And Gibson Park and the neighboring streets will become parking areas for this development. We also need to discuss the antiquated and inadequate water and sewer infrastructure that plagues us down there. We currently experience low water pressure, collapsed drain pipes, and broken water mains. As recently as this past January, we went without water for almost 24 hours due to a broken water main. We also have had surge backup into our basement. I can't imagine the additional strain 42 units will have on this already overtaxed system. You just need to talk to Donnie Goodwin. He'll fill you in on what we've been through down there. Again, if you are considering issuing a special permit, I would like to request an engineering study to be done to assess the ability of this infrastructure to handle the increased burden. And finally, let's talk about the flooding. we experience considerable flooding during storms and astronomical high tides. Thayer Avenue is one of the lowest areas of the riverside, and it does flood with regularity. As recently as January 3rd, 2014, we experienced almost 2 feet of storm surge, which flowed the entire length of Thayer Ave and approximately 3 blocks of the Mills Ave section, effectively cutting off all access to Thayer Ave completely. The developer has proposed filling in his property, something, by the way, he already started last summer without a permit and was issued a cease and desist order. By diverting water away from his property, it will only add to more flooding for the rest of us. The developer may be able to stop some of the flooding on his property. However, his condo owners will find no way out when Mills Ave and Thayer Ave flood. Again, I would ask you all to require an environmental impact report of how his filling of the property will affect flooding in the area before issuing a special permit. It's important that you know how very detrimental this condo will be for us in the Riverside. It's a terrible proposal. We don't want to stand for it, and neither should you. And thank you so much.
Thank you very much. Please state your name and address.
Good evening. My name is Ricky Lacentra, 30 John Avenue, and I agree 100% with what my wife said. Exactly.
You may get supper tonight.
I'm going to be briefer so I can give more time for other people. But I had a few questions. I actually had 5 questions, but I just wanted to read one thing briefly and present this to the council. So what I will do is, in my hands here, I've got a petition, and I just wanted to read the petition and then present it to the council. It says, "We, the undersigned residents living in the Riverside neighborhood, located in Revere, Massachusetts, are opposed to the granting of a special permit for a PUD, planned unit development, consisting of a 42-unit residential condominium development located at 29 Thayer Avenue, Revere, Mass. We feel the issuing of a special permit for a PUD in this area is not consistent with the purpose set forth in the Revere Code of Ordinances, Chapter 17.20, Section 030A, purpose, that it will improve and/or reinforce the livability and aesthetic qualities of the surrounding neighborhood and/or environment, which it won't. I want to present to the members of the committee a petition signed by 125 residents of the Riverside.
Thank you. I have been given a petition as stated at the podium. I will take your word for it. There's 125 or so signatures on here, but we will accept this as into our documentary record.
Thank you. I counted them a few times. So, may I have time to ask the 5 questions? Or?
That's what we're here for.
Okay. The developer, through his attorney, said that there was going to be 29 slips there. Do they anticipate, obviously, that they're going to do some dredging to exacerbate the flooding?
If you have an answer to that. If not, we certainly can defer that, because obviously this is something that we're going to be holding in the subcommittee pending the traffic study. But if you'd like to defer, I would suggest that you do get some form of an answer, or at least expectation, shall we say. That's whatever you can offer, but I can understand that you're not having that answer right now. But we would appreciate it at the next meeting. Something else?
Yeah. The second question is which launch ramp are you referring to? There are no public launch ramps in the Riverside.
The launch ramp that, if you were looking out to the river, is to the left of the property.
I think there was a launch ramp there, and I think what the issue is it's so deteriorated at this point that it may not be recognizable. Am I?
It's very much in existence. I mean, you can recognize it as a ramp. It's not in.
So you're saying the John Avenue ramp? that my dad put in there in 1960. That's the only ramp I know of that is in the neighborhood. Yeah, you can't, we don't want that in there anyway. The third question, thank you. You had already addressed the parking, 84 parking spaces. There's lack of visitor parking that they haven't really answered, and lack of visitor parking for the slips if they rent out more slips. And what about the slips for winter storage? Where's the space you're going to provide to put slips in the wintertime? Like boat yards and okay. Everything, city services is going to be tied into the city services, but I didn't hear the waste, the storage part, not the storm drain, the surge. I haven't heard that that's going to be tied into city services, and I believe the waste piping, surge piping from a condo would be about 6 to 8 inches in diameter, and I believe the Thayer Ave piping is 6 inches, so you can't put 5 pounds of you-know-what into a 2-pound bag. So would they just rip up all our streets to alleviate that and replace the piping? That's just a question or a comment. And lastly, you had mentioned about pitching 7.5 elevation up to an 11 elevation and pitching it towards the river with a paved parking lot that's gathering oil and everything from the cars going into the river. However, at the last meeting, or at least the wharf meeting also, you had mentioned that you were going to have a seawall. So if you're pitching the water into the seawall, it's going to divert back over into Mills Avenue. Thank you very much for your time.
You know what I'm going to suggest is that hopefully you've taken note of these questions. If not, you can ask this gentleman after the meeting, and I'm sure you'll give them a copy of your questions. And given the fact that obviously the more we talk here, the more questions we have, the fewer answers. But at this point, I think it's important to have the questions so that we can get the answers.
I understand that, and I just want to make one more comment. I think this is so premature because we don't have any answers. When we're asking about Thayer Avenue, they're giving us information about what goes on in Winthrop. And you can't make an educated decision without having all the answers down. And that's my opinion. I'm sure that's yours too. Thank you very much.
Yes, it is very much our opinion. It appears that the information is only incremental at this point, and I really do think we do need some more answers. Does anybody else wish to speak? Please step forward. Whomever. We'll see that the subcommittee gets copies, and then everybody else can share one, I guess.
There you go. All right, it's Elaine Hurley, 21 River Avenue. Excuse me. Good evening, gentlemen and ladies. Thank you for the chance to address your concerns, and I really would like to thank all of you for what you've said tonight and the issues you've brought up. They've been fabulous, and I'm sure the whole neighborhood is really appreciative of the way you're appreciating us and what we go through down there. What we like to say is the boatyard is very small, and you'll see their lot is very small. And in the pictures I put in there, you'll see that the boatyard lot is the same size as our lots. That's the first 2 blocks. You'll see the boatyard's the same size as the first 2 blocks going up. And we have like 8 or 10 houses on those blocks. The zoning on that parcel was changed to stop overdevelopment. 28 years ago, we were looking at 16 stories, 129 units, so thank God that was changed. And it was changed so that we didn't have to go through stuff like this. They can put single-family houses, 2-family houses by right. But here they are tonight asking for a PUD, so they can put 42 units. I don't think that what they have is considered for a PUD. The land use has to be shown to be in the public good, in that it will improve or reinforce the livability and aesthetic qualities of the surrounding neighborhood and our environment. I don't think adding 84 or more cars a day to a small neighborhood improves our livability. To have boats and trailers parked everywhere does not make the area aesthetically pleasing. And having driveways in the middle of the street the kids use to get back and forth to the park is not safe. In your packet, there are deeds. This is going to get off. This is what I wanted to bring up to you at the council meeting, and I was told to bring it up here. So I've put all the documentation in your packets, and you'll find, I don't understand why Joel is here for getting the permit, when the property belongs to, who is it? Well, it doesn't belong to Joel. So if you look in there, you'll find all of what you need to know on who the property does belong to, and I apologize that they're all out of order. I was at the printers having the copy just before the meeting, and I was in a real big hurry. If you look at the Thayer Avenue, 29th Thayer Avenue was sold to Thayer Avenue Development Company, and that's who we're dealing with today, is Thayer Avenue Development Company. And if you look, it'll tell you that Anthony DeLuca is the owner, well, the person in charge of that. So my question is that, why is Joel filing for this special permit with his name on it, when his name is on nothing? Nothing that I gave you has his name on it, nothing. I have a couple of questions in regards to the lawyer's comments at the public hearing. He said this was a scaled-down project from the meeting of July 25th at Pesci Pazzo. I have included a flyer from that night in your packet. It's the same development. It's the same thing. Also, he told us the developer has a proven track record. I understand there's some issues going on at the Atlantis. The ramp, I would like to know if that ramp is the one in the front of the property. I'd also like to know where they plan on putting the car and boat trailers after the boats are launched. I guess one really important thing is when it floods down there, where are they going to put their cars? The cars that are parked under the building, where are they going to put them? We have to move our cars. We put them way up on Highlands, on Hayes Ave. Where are they going to put 84 cars? They can't leave them under the building. They're going to get wet. So where are they going to go? Another question I have is the docks that you're going to have in the water, because you're going to have this marina. Where are you going to put those docks in the winter? The docks have to come out in the winter. We have icebergs, big, huge icebergs, as maybe you found out this winter when you've seen what happened to the docks. You can't leave your floats in. You have to do something with them. You're going to haul them off the property, haul them away, or are you going to try to put them up in your property somewhere? Dredging. Dredging that area will take the rest of our beach. We have Jersey barriers down there now holding our street together. The reason we have Jersey barriers is because the person dredged out there before, the gentleman that owned the boatyard. It took years, but all that beach fell right into that hole. That hole that he dredged, it all went in that hole. So we ended up with no beach, which, you look at the pictures, I don't know if any of them show how bad the slope is. But if dredging will cause that. One last thing I'd like to say, although I can go on and on. The attorneys have said they've been good neighbors. I've given you pictures showing you after they moved in, and I believe it's up on the big pictures too, over there. They'd lugged all those floats from the Atlantis, a whole bunch of them, to the front of this property. And they let them sit there until they rotted down to nothing. We were so inundated with rats at that time. My husband was catching, they were eating the decon faster than he could buy it. They were hitting them in the street. That's how many rats there were in the neighborhood. And it had to be coming from there. So, as you can see, they sat, you see how bad it was. Then they proceeded to make an illegal ramp. And you'll see the pictures in there, destroying wetlands in the process. They were fined, they had to restore it. However, the ramp is still there. They still use it. They still launch boats on it. And you'll see pictures of it there. And just recently, they brought in truckloads of fill. They were told they needed to take it out. They didn't take it out. They spread it out. This is a good neighbor. This property has been an issue for 28 years, and I agree to what Linda Rosa said at the hearing. Maybe it's time to have it zoned like the rest of the neighborhood. Maybe it's time to RA it, and then we don't have to go through this. We've been going through this for 28 years. This is not the first development that's been in the 28 years. We've had row houses, we've had another development. It just keeps coming back. In closing, I'd like to ask you, please, for the sake of the children and the young families who have recently purchased homes down there, do not reward bad behavior with a special permit. That will just be so detrimental to our neighborhood. And I thank you for your time, and I very much thank you for your comments.
Thank you very much. I'd first of all like to acknowledge that you gave us a packet of information consisting essentially of a deed, some certificates that are recorded at the Registry of Deeds, Suffolk Registry of Deeds, as well as some, looks like downloaded pages from the Secretary of State's Office Corporations Division. I'm not going to go through every single one of them, but we acknowledge receiving them. Anybody else like to speak, please?
Donna Wood Pruitt, 172 Endicott Avenue, Revere, Revere School Committee. I am speaking as Donna Wood Pruitt, and the calls that I get from Riverside, and my calls from Riverside are about the kids. There's not enough room for them to stand waiting for the bus. Now, can you imagine 40, 50, 60 cars coming down? Those kids are waiting for the bus from like 7:15 to 7:30. We have middle school, high school, and elementary kids that are going to Paul Revere. And also, if he doesn't sell the condos, he can make apartments. And if you're on subsidized housing and you have two kids and they're the same sex and you only have a one-bedroom, the parent can sleep on the couch as long as the kids have a bedroom. I called someone today to find that out. So if you have a boy and a girl and he has 2.5 or 1.5 rooms there, they each can have a separate room, and the mother can sleep on the couch, and that's considered her bed. We don't need one more child coming into the Paul Revere School or any schools in Revere. You know what it costs to educate them, and we have to think about that. Think about that he's not going to sell them for $300,000, $400,000, $500,000. Not down there looking over Resco and GE and everything else that happens down there with the flooding. So the only way to make money is to take in someone with subsidized housing and make those apartments. And they're not saying, they can't, if you can't sell them, you got to do something with them. And he's not going to tear them back down, so he'll come and say, I'm making apartments. And that's all I have to say. I'm worried about their neighborhood. I grew up with my aunt on Beckett Street, being there all the time. And it's a nice neighborhood, and I have a lot of friends down there. And I just don't want to see the young families down there move out because of what could possibly happen. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Would anybody else like to speak? Please step forward. If you'd raise your hand when I ask that question, it would be helpful. That way I can select someone and we don't have 4 people rushing the podium. Thank you. Please use your name and address.
Sandra Jukes, 21 Sunnyside Road, Lynn, Massachusetts. I grew up on the Riverside. I grew up on the corner of River and Mills. My parents still own the house there now. We played out there in the summer from morning till night. Now I bring my children down there, and they play on the corner of River and Mills. Now, I was hit by a car down there when I was 7 years old. Do you really think that we need another 100 cars a day coming by that house? Because if there's going to be all these apartments, all these parking spots, all these docks, and a marina, plus visitors, all those cars have to go by the corner of River and Mills. All the kids play out there on the beach. It's not a good project for this area. Something needs to be done there, of course, but not this many units. It needs to be scaled down so it fits into the neighborhood. And that's it. Have a nice evening, gentlemen and ladies.
Thank you very much. Sir?
My name is Richie DeCristoforo. I live at 31 Mills Avenue in Revere. I was born and brought up in Revere. We've lived down on the Riverside for 30 years. My wife was born and brought up down on the Pines. And we brought up 2 children, at the time, right now, it's just like the councils have said, it's a beautiful area to live. We enjoy it, and I think they hit it right on the head that the neighborhood needs to have something that conforms to what the neighborhood is. And this unit does not conform to the neighborhood. Okay, we have a beautiful Gibson Park to the right of the unit where the Little League practices, the softball teams are down there Sunday mornings, and we love it. There's children playing on the swings and so forth, and I think it's wonderful that the children of Revere can now use it. With this unit going in and the cars being in the area, and I have a new granddaughter probably going to be wanting to go down to the park, I mean, we're going to have to take a car or a bus down there because walking is going to be probably pretty dangerous. And just another concern, again, it's been bothering me, but I think it's a good time to share it with you all, is this is a proposal. What I've heard is that there were trucks of dirt and loam being dumped there at that site. What is that about, Mr. Reardon? I mean, do we know what that's about? I know they're talking about different levels, 7, 8, 9 levels, and thank God, again, Revere does a great job. The Conservation Commission got involved in it and stopped them, okay, and I think that's wonderful. But what are we trying to do here, you know, with this group of people trying to build this?
I think they explained what they're planning on doing. They're planning on raising the level. Obviously, something's got to be put there in order to do that. They're not going to defy gravity for sure.
Right, I know, but I mean, this is a proposal, and they've already started putting dirt.
Well, I think they were admonished. I believe they were admonished for that.
Okay, and they want to be our neighbors.
Your point is well taken.
Okay, thank you very much, and council, thank you very much. The first time I've been up here, first time I've been at the council, and I'm very, very impressed, and I love Revere. Thank you.
Come back and see us soon. Sir.
Good evening, Robert Berg, 22 Wadley Ave. I've lived there for 15 years. Love the neighborhood. I'd like to ask the developers, could I ask the developers a question? Can you name one way that our neighborhood will benefit from this project, a single way that will benefit from this?
I think it would be an improvement over the existing dilapidated living condition.
We don't.
I think it would be far preferable to any light industrial use that we might be able to find for the property. I think, a better, more functional marina would benefit the property, both aesthetically and functionally.
Well, I disagree, and I think the rest of the residents disagree. Thank you.
Thank you. Anybody else? Please come forward. Ms. Vincent, you were first. You'll get your shot.
Rosalie Vincent, 350 Revere Beach Boulevard. I'm new to the beach area, but I just wanted to be up here and to support the residents. I do believe if there's 125 single-family homes in this area, to put in one building with 42 units, I think would be totally out of line with the character of the neighborhood. So I just wanted to be brief and just to say that I support the residents and I would oppose this project. Thank you.
Thank you. Young man.
My name is Ricky Lacentra Jr., 30 John Avenue. I believe Elaine raised this point. During a flooding situation, where are the cars going to go that are parked underneath the property at ground level? To elaborate on that point, during a flooding situation, there's usually a snowstorm involved, and there's a storm surge of some sort. We're located on a coastal flooding plain. Excuse me. At that point, it's a question of do the cars stay under the building, or do they go out into the neighborhood at a critical time while there's snowfall, when we need the streets as clear as possible? I wonder if the developer has considered this, because it's not a question of if, it's a question of when. Has the developer considered a plan for an emergency situation like that?
Would you care to respond?
Was that a question, sir?
Yes.
And if you're going to respond, we'd appreciate it if you come to the microphone. I think that would probably be better. I think the question was, what happens when the inevitable flood comes that would force the vehicles that are parked under the building and, for that matter, in the parking lot outside the building, what will happen with those cars when that flood is predicted, presumably, and they have an opportunity to move them? Where are they going to move them to, I guess, is the question. Am I paraphrasing correctly? Yes. Thank you.
So if we're talking about surface in the gray area, that's outside the building. If it gets underneath the building, that's a catastrophic flood. However, I know that what's going to happen is that when we go back to site plan review, when you go through the whole cycle of the process, and they need to sign off on final conditions, we're going to need to give them a maintenance and operation plan, and it's going to have to include an evacuation plan and a vehicle relocation plan and the rest. We probably will be dictated as to what's going to happen to that. Rather than us choosing, we can suggest, but my experience has been that the final say is not with us. So it's with the city's professional staff and the engineers that are on staff, working in conjunction with the site plan review. However, great question, and it's something that all of these waterfront developments seem to need to encounter. So, and different ones are mandated to address it in different ways. Yet to be seen what the city will require us to do. But I wouldn't want to see a flood that came all the way up and flooded that under the building parking area. Although, you live there, if it could happen, it can happen. So it would have to be part of the evacuation and the M&O, and that would be dictated.
Thank you, Attorney. Please come forward.
Yes, my name's Ron Weinberg. I'm at 71 Mills Ave. I've listened to all of this, and I try to make decisions based on information, as everybody else does. In listening to all of the problems that this building can cause our area, and listening to the few answers of how it will improve the area, and I'm asked to make a decision. How can I make a decision in favor of something when so many problems may exist? Now, we're going to hear from all of the experts. We're going to hear from the traffic commission, and they'll all be in favor of this project. But every single one of the items that has been brought up tonight, if just one thing goes wrong, will impact that neighborhood to no return. Whether it be the traffic, whether it be the water, whether it be the storage, all of them. One thing goes wrong, and we've lost that area. It has changed forever. The people down there, the citizens, the people that own the homes, have voiced their opinion to the city council. We don't want this. We want improvement, but we don't want to be faced with all of the problems that may happen. Thank you.
Thank you. Would anyone else care to speak? Please come forward.
Hi, my name is Christine Carey. I live at 86 Linway, Revere, Mass. I'm not in favor of this project, and I'm here in support of the Riverside people. I think it's too intrusive into the neighborhood. Obviously, the traffic has already been discussed. We don't have a firehouse that is currently staffed. If you live in the area during the summertime, you can barely get out at the time. You know, the traffic flow is just terrible, and I just don't think something of this scope adds anything to the neighborhood. We have 190 Lindway, which, to be frank, shouldn't have been built. We have 180 to 182, which shouldn't have been built. This isn't an urban area. This is a nice single-family area that should be kept that way. I also had questions about the actual owner of the property and who the management was, so maybe if Attorney Cipolletta could please clarify. And who is here tonight on behalf of the...
Let me just say one cautionary word. The owner of the property appears to be an LLC. That's a limited liability corporation. And the corporation can essentially designate anybody who they want to speak on their behalf, an employee, an attorney, such as Mr. Cipolletta, or anybody. So it's a corporately owned development project with maybe perhaps many people who will speak for the company before all of this, should it go beyond here, is determined.
Yeah, I understand that. Is Mr. DeLuca a manager, or is he just part of the company? I guess is my question.
I am a member of the LLC.
You're a member of the
LLC.
LLC.
In a corporation.
All right, so you're not the manager that was listed at the...
I am not the manager of the LLC.
And the address of the LLC is 35 Gove Street in Boston?
No, that is not correct.
No.
That is out-of-date information. Which,
okay.
If whoever pulled it up knew what they were doing, would have pulled up the correct information.
I'm not sure what that exactly has to do with the issues that we're confronting here. I understand that you would like to know who the manager is, but frankly, in a situation like this, the manager could be here today and gone tomorrow. It depends on who's hired, who's fired, who's et cetera, et cetera. So
I'm just trying to understand who's here representing the company.
this gentleman is representing the company as well as his attorney, yes.
Yes, sir. And when I brought up 35 Gove Street, it came up as a school in Boston. So obviously that's not the right address.
Well, it may not be, but it could. It is the correct address?
I think it was a result of a typo at some point in the process.
So it's talking about something else.
Mr. Chairman, you accurately stated the law in LLCs, and it is owned by Thayer Avenue Development Company, LLC. We have the tax bill. The address is actually on the tax bill, and it's showing the tax bill sent to 2 Nectar Place, Nahant, Massachusetts, and that's where they receive their tax and all of the rest of their official documents. The Gove Street apparently was an address of a former manager, and when you pull that up, and in fact, you will see that across the spectrum here, from when we began, it was like 2009 or 2010, different managers, different addresses, different LLC designations pop up in the site plan review filings. So some of the information is from the site plan review file when it was filed early on. Some of that now has changed. But nonetheless, it's still the Thayer Avenue Development Company, LLC. Joel is a member. His father, Anthony, is a member. And as the Chairman said, there are other members. But the LLC is the LLC. They own it. Joel can speak on behalf of it, and I represent them.
Thank you very much, Attorney. Anyone else like to please step forward?
Yes, my name is John Hurley. I live at 21 River Ave, Revere. I've lived down the Point of Pines for 60 years. About 5 times a year, I have to move my car, and there's barely enough room to park it in an area where it doesn't flood. One other concern I have is this building is going to be built up high. I'm only 2-3 houses away from where this building is going to be built. My house has a toilet in the bathroom. The house next to me has a toilet in the bathroom. When we get these high tides, I have to actually block my toilet with rags and stuff, a 2x4 against the ceiling to stop the water from coming through. We have all these apartments being built over there. What's going to happen when they flush their toilets? They're up high, a lot of pressure on the drains. I'm going to have a problem. Other people are going to have a problem when we have these high tides, or we may even have a problem when there's not high tides, when they flush all these toilets at the same time. And it's big drains coming down, and it's going into a little drain. Where's the water going to go? If it can't get out the drain, it's going to come up into the houses. Thank you for your consideration.
Thank you very much. Anyone else? Please come forward.
Hi, Kelly Edmonds, 10 River Ave. All of my concerns have been said and mentioned. I just have two things to say. As of right now, it takes me 1 hour to drop my daughter off at Susan B. Anthony and come home. That's one thing. And the other thing is, in one of these storms in this past January, water came halfway up my driveway. I've owned my home since 2005. It's never happened before. I'm not in favor of it.
Thank you. Anyone else? Well, given that, couple things. First of all, Councilor Powers wants to speak on this, and in just a minute I'm going to let him do that. And I'm going to let him do that before I ask for a show of hands, although I think I know what we're going to see as to favoritism at this point or opposition to this proposal. Now, and I'm bearing in mind that we certainly don't have all the information that we've asked for yet, but I think I should probably let everyone know, as Attorney Cipolletta has suggested, there are many more phases. Should this PUD be approved, there are many more phases and layers of authority over it as to things such as sewage and where it's going and other very technical issues which we have professional people in the city to manage. What we're here to do is to determine essentially whether this is a good idea conceptually more than technically. So that's what we're trying to determine, whether it's a good idea for our city conceptually, not just certainly for the people in the Pines and Riverside, but certainly for the entire city as well. So I'm going to ask Councilor Powers to give us an opportunity, give him an opportunity to give his thoughts on this matter, as he is the ward councilor. And then I will certainly ask for a show of hands at this point. But beyond that, I would expect that we'll be holding this in the subcommittee for some of the answers that we hope to get, at least that you've asked and the questions you've asked. Councilor Powers.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Chairman, I could give you my thoughts in a two-letter word, N-O, but I won't do that right now. During the past year and a half, I was approached by several individuals who asked me how I felt about a development going down there of this magnitude. I said I was opposed to it. I said what you really should do is rent the function room at the Point of Pines Yacht Club on a Sunday afternoon when there's no major sports teams playing. Give me the literature on what you want to propose, and I'll make sure that every resident on Riverside and even some residents on the Pine side get it. And I was approached maybe 3-4 times. Finally, I got a call from a couple of the residents down there telling me that there was a meeting in a night or two down at the wharf. And I made it a point to get down there and attend the meeting. It was obvious to me at that meeting how the residents felt. They didn't want this. I believe that the developer at that point was told to go away and come back with another plan. About a week later, I got a call from some of the residents down there telling me that there were probably 20 to 30 truckloads of fill being dumped down there. I went down and looked at it and subsequently contacted Andy DeSantis, the chairman of the Conservation Commission. We went down together. We met down there with a police officer. He confirmed the fact that this dumping was going on. And at that point, he called the attorney representing this LLC and told them that the fill had to be removed. My understanding is some of it was removed, but not all of it. Because after the phone call, they had a bulldozer down there spreading the fill around. And this told me that they had a complete disregard for the residents that live in Riverside, knowing that that area is prone to flooding. Now, my feeling is with regard to that area down there, maybe it should remain a boatyard. I don't know. That's what they can do. Maybe they can put, I believe, 5 two-family homes down there. And I don't have a problem with that, and I'm sure the residents, because this is what they'd be allowed to do as a matter of right. I think the parking, asking for a parking survey down there, I don't need a parking survey. I can tell you right now that 82 cars going in there, but cars going, visiting people and marine slips down there, it's going to inundate that entire area with traffic. I remember that area 60 years ago. My uncle lived down there on Gilbert Avenue, and my cousin still does live down there. And I remember what it was like. It was a nice single-family area, and there were good families that lived down there. It was what we wanted in the city of Revere and what we still want today. As a matter of fact, Councilor at that time, Rizzo, was chairman of the zoning committee, and I prevailed upon him to eliminate the word special permit in the RA district in the Point of Pines, Riverside, and the Grove section of Oak Island. And we did that. And we did that with the support of many members of this city council at that time. You can no longer get a special permit for a two-family home in that area or on the other side of the Pines. And that's a good thing. We should be looking now for commercial development in this city. That's where the tax revenue comes from, and that's where the services that are required are diminished. You don't have to provide those services. I've been down there as recently as this past January, and I saw the water probably 7 or 8 inches deep on Mills Avenue. And I said to myself, that plan they were showing, that rendering, shows a seawall. Well, all that seawall is going to do is keep the water off of that property, and it's going to force it down maybe to as far down as Archer Avenue, where they have flooding down there periodically. The water has to go somewhere. If it doesn't go there, it's going to come up another section of Mills Avenue. And I think the question about where are the cars going to go, I think that's an excellent question. I'll tell you where they're going to go. They'll be on Wadley, they'll be on Gilbert, they'll be on Lawson, they'll be on Archer, and all the other streets down there. That's where the cars are going to go. Because no one who buys a unit down there, or probably rents a unit down there, it would be the case, is going to leave their car in a foot of water, having it rust, the wheels rust and everything else. So they're going to move it off to a side street. And what's that going to cost? That's going to cause arguments, problems in the neighborhood, and everything else that comes with it. So I'm against this project 100%. And I would ask my colleagues to oppose this project 100%. It's not a good thing for this city. It's not a good thing for that neighborhood. That neighborhood is one of the last pristine neighborhoods we have in this city. It's family orientated. It's the way a city should be. There are places for condominiums and there are places for commercial development. But I can tell you now, in my opinion, that boatyard is not that place. And once again, I would ask my colleagues to look at this carefully, and I want to commend all of them tonight for asking these questions. I think they did an excellent job. And I would hope that those sentiments would carry through to a vote whenever this is reported out of committee, whether favorably or unfavorably. I would ask that this project not be allowed down there. And I would say to the developer and the developer's attorney who was here tonight, you want to do something down there? Come back with something and meet with the residents down there and let the ward councilor and the other councilors know what you're proposing down there or what the owner of the property is proposing. Maybe it's something that'll work down there, but I can tell you now, as far as I'm concerned, 42 units does not go down there, 32 units does not go down there, and 22 units does not go down there. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Councilor Powers. As promised, I'll ask, and I don't necessarily think this is particularly necessary at this point, but I will ask with the understanding that we do not yet have all the information that we may need to make a final decision on that. I will ask now for all of those who oppose this to kindly raise their hands and let the City Council know. Thank you very much. First of all, I want to thank everybody for coming here tonight. It's very important that you tell us how you feel, as always. I want to thank my colleagues for asking some extremely thoughtful, intelligent questions. I want to thank the Attorney Cipolletta and his manager for coming here today and giving us a forthright presentation of what they intend to do. I know that they will come back to us with some of the answers, hopefully all of the answers that you have to the questions that you've asked, as well as especially the issues regarding the traffic and the traffic study that they have completed. I'll ask Attorney Cipolletta to submit a copy of the traffic study to the clerk for distribution to our subcommittee at the very least, if not, in fact, the entire City Council really ought to get a copy of it. I cannot say exactly when we'll have our next subcommittee meeting, but be in touch with the clerk's office to determine that. As to this issue myself, I agree with Councilor Arrigo, it's very difficult to make decisions without all the answers, and unfortunately, because of this process, we're not really going to get all of the answers. As I said, it's our job to determine whether this type of project, this kind of project, would fit in what we consider to be a wise decision for the City Council to make by allowing a planned unit development in this area. But I would caution you one thing, and that is that presently this area is zoned for light industrial. What I would suggest you do is maybe take a look at the table of uses in the city, which is available through the our website, cityrevere.org, as well as at the city clerk's office, because while the planned unit development is not of right, it needs a special permit. That's what we're here to do. There are things that that area is now zoned for that are of right. And I think it would be wise to understand what that area could become if it doesn't become this. My personal opinion is I really don't like to see industrial land turn into residential land unless it's absolutely necessary. But it's important that you understand what it could be other than this. So I think that's one thing that you folks could do pending our next meeting. So thank you all for coming. That concludes the zoning subcommittee meeting for the 20th of February, 2014. Thank you.